Well, hi there. So in this video, we're going to do lots of graphs, 8 supply and demand graphs, where we see what happens when demand and supply change, and then we're going to finish when both change. So let's get started. So the first thing we want to do when we kind of take this page is actually set it up where we do the supply and demand graphs for everything, and then we're going to kind of go back and manipulate them. And what that really is practicing your muscles so that you're just like, boom, 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 boom. If you wondered, like, how does he draw these so fast? I do them a zillion times. And that's partly is what we're going to do here. So first we're going to say, let's just go ahead and draw a price and quantity axis for every single one of these. And because I'm using pen here, it might get a little bit smudged. I'm going to try not to do that and lift up my hand, but hopefully we can make it work, right? So while I'm doing this, you go ahead and draw your 8 little graphs, right? If I've got to do it, or if you've got to do it, I got to do it too. Here we got P's and Q's, right? You ever heard the phrase, mind your P's and Q's? That's what we're minding. Mind our P's and Q's because we got price and we got quantity on these axes. And then we're going to come back up, and let me actually undo my shirt so I don't get a whole lot of ink all over myself. We got supply, and whoa, that's kind of a sloppy looking one. Supply and demand, right? Whoa, supply and demand, and then demand and supply, and then demand and then supply, demand and supply, demand and supply, demand and supply, demand, supply. Now, we're going to do the prices and the quantities. Q star, P star, Q star, P star. And again, I know you're like, oh my gosh, why didn't he just do this for me? Because you know what? We got to do a little bit of practice with drawing supply and demand graphs. I know what they look like. Now we got to practice, make sure that you know what they look like. Q star, P star. And again, these are standing in for that equilibrium. So price and quantity. How's your day going? Your day going okay? Hopefully your day's going all right. Mine's okay. You know, I'm thinking about the weather. It's really nice out. At least it is right now. Who knows when you're watching this, whether it's going to be terrible. All right, so we got all these Q stars and P stars. Hopefully now we're ready to rock and roll. First little scenario is going to say increase in demand. And this box up here is asking us what happens to the equilibrium price, what happens to the equilibrium quantity. So we're going to put ups and down arrows in those. And so when we have more demand, we know that the demand curve shifts to the right. We're going to put a little arrow right there and put a D sub 1. That D sub 1 is telling my reader, hey, this one happened after that one, right? And the little arrow is another kind of tip that we need to include those, or else it's harder for the grader to know. They don't know maybe if that's like a stray hash mark or something. So we put that little arrow in. Then we're going to say, okay, what's the effect on the quantity? Well, Q sub 1 and P sub 1. And we're going to put a little arrow here and a little arrow here. And those arrows are really just kind of making sure that we're covering all of our bases so we don't lose easy points, right? On the AP exam, this graph right here might be worth 2 or even maybe 3 points, depending on how the question is phrased. That may not sound like a lot. The entire question might only be worth 5 points. So you could get half of the points maybe. You could get a fourth of the points if it's a 10-point question just by drawing this basic graph that we've learned here in the first week of school. So we do have an increase and an increase. This is the kind of thing where like you might see a multiple choice question later on that'll say, hey, there was an increase in demand. What happened to quantity? After a while, you're going to get to the point where you're going to go, I know when an increase in demand happens, there's higher prices and higher quantities. Now, decrease in demand, that's going to be the other direction, D sub 1. And again, put a little arrow there to indicate that we're making that shift go that way. Q sub 1 is a decrease in price and in quantity. So we have 2 down arrows for our price and quantity. Now let's talk about supply. When there's more supply, shift to the right. And this is going to lead to larger quantities in the market and lower prices. So we have kind of a good thing for consumers, right? In that sense, when there's more supply of the good. If there's decreases though in that supply curve, then we go Q sub 1, that's a decrease, and P sub 1, that's an increase. So prices would rise while quantities would fall. So when supply changes, you're going to have opposite effects on price and quantity, but when demand changes, you're going to have direct effects, right? They move together. Now, for part 3 and part 4, this is where things get challenging, right? This bottom part of the page. The top part of the page, pretty straightforward. I think most people get these really fast. Where the bottom is 2 things happening at once. And what I'm going to tell you is that it's really helpful if you try to, when you shift, you're going to shift both supply and demand at the same time. It's helpful if you try to shift them the same amount. And so watch and learn. when we shift supply as an increase to the right, I'm going to try to like change our demand curve by about the same amount. And there, I just decreased it by about the same amount. Now, that increase in supply and decrease in demand, it's helpful if you identify the old point. That's where we were, Q star, P star. The new point is where D1 and S1 intercept. So that's down here. Now, I don't know about you, but pretty obvious to me that price is lower, right? Pretty obvious that this dot is lower than that dot. But it's not actually readily apparent what happened to the quantity. Because if the demand shift or the supply shift were larger than the other, we could tell. But we don't have enough information to know whether one of them is larger than the other. So we actually have to say that the other variable is indeterminate, that we can't tell. So we would say that, price decreased and quantity was indeterminate, right? And you can write out indeterminate or you can't tell or something. Whoa, hello. Whoa, a little bit of earthquake. I walked into that there or bumped into it. So it is useful to kind of remember you've got one of them that's going to be indeterminate. Now let's try it over here and kind of see what happens. Move this up just a shade. Decrease in supply. So again, I'm going to try to shift these about the same amount, an increase in demand. And so here, increase in demand, our old point, I'm going to make a big dot, and the new point, D1 and S1 is up here. And again, I can pretty easily tell, again, I don't know about you, I can see price is way higher, but my quantity is kind of a question mark, like is a bigger or smaller quantity. So again, here price went up and quantity was indeterminate. Can't tell. Now for the bottom two, where they're both increasing and both decreasing, we're still going to have one that's indeterminate, but it'll be the other variable. So let's take a look at what happens. For this one, increase in supply, and that's going to be our S1. And then we're going to say increase in demand is a D1. So here's an increase and here's an increase. Old point, new point, right? And now here, I can't really tell. Did price go up or did it go down? But I can for sure tell that quantity increased. So on these, I can say, well, quantity, yeah, but price is indeterminate, right? I can't tell. And the same is true if we have a decrease in supply and a simultaneous decrease in demand. You're going to go from this old point to this new point. And again, here you can easily see quantity is decreasing, but price remains indeterminate. My biggest piece of advice with these, draw the graph. I'm going to say it again, draw the graph. Like it's really, really important when you have double shifts, draw the graph. One shift, okay, maybe you could get away without like drawing it out. But I'm telling you, if you get a question that asks you about a double shift, and it'll happen in the multiple choice section, draw that puppy out. You don't have to label everything, but make sure that you're able to see it because then it's a heck of a lot easier. All right, so hopefully this helps you understand the changes in equilibrium price and quantity with supply and demand. I'll see you next time.